Good afternoon and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm Justine Reichman, your host, and today I'm excited to welcome Ira van Eelen and Yvette Yuan. Thank you, ladies, for joining me. Thank you, Ira.
Thank you.
I know it is so late there, but I'm really grateful that you have agreed to chat with me in the middle of the night from Amsterdam.
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
And I'm I'm almost rocking asleep here because I live on a boat in Amsterdam, and and it's November here, so we have some storm, and then the boat is slowly rocking. So I'll try and stay awake for you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. But I got to ask, living on a boat has always been a dream of mine. It's a very romantic dream. Is it as great as I imagine it to be?
Yeah. Everybody who comes here has a certain image, like that it's small and dark and that we have low ceilings, and which we actually don't have. It's very light. There's light everywhere. We have extremely high ceilings, and it's very spacious, especially for a small town like Amsterdam, where all the houses are actually minute. And you are outside a lot, and you know what the weather is like, and we have all of these outside birds, and we even can hear the fish nibble at the boat. And yes, it feels as if I am 365 days of the years on vacation. Yeah, it does actually feel like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to live on a boat. I grew up, my dad had a power boat, and we spent a lot of time on that boat. And many years ago, not that many, like in the last 20 years, he had been moving around, and I kept saying, forget about buying an apartment. I'm like, buy a boat, live on the boat.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this, and he lives in the middle of New York City, by the way. So he's like, so when it's raining and sleeting, that sounds like fun to you? I'm like, kind of. The Upper West Side, there's a marina. East 23rd Street. He didn't really listen to me. Still, it sounds idyllic to me.
Yeah.
But
well,
anyway, I want to talk about Kind Earth Tech, which is right behind you. I love the sign you have behind you, Kind Earth Tech.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you get involved in the space of alternative protein?
Well, that happened quite some time ago. I think when I was 14, and that's quite some time ago when I was 14. It's over 40 years ago. I suddenly noticed my father going out of his way to meet all kind of scientists and starting to talk about creating meat from stem cells and having conversations with friends, doing the math that if the Chinese in this world would also start eating meat like the Americans and the Europeans, they actually did the math. And so when I was 14, they told me, Ira, what is going to happen? We will need, if we continue this way, 4 planets. And there's a big chance that we won't have any polar caps. And probably the Netherlands is a hole in the ocean. And at 14, you just listen to your parents and you think, okay, these crazy old people.
Do a lot of nodding.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And the most difficult part was probably at the time trying to explain what my father was working on to people. These days, if your parents are doing something in alternative protein or in solar power or in something else sustainable, wow, that's a good job. Wow, this is great. Well, in the 1980s, saying that your father was creating, let's say, what we now call cultivated meat, that was kind of a hard job to do.
It's an interesting point that you make. I just, as you're sitting there saying that, I'm thinking about myself. And I remember I could never explain what my father did. If he wasn't an attorney, a doctor, or something straightforward. But now, how cool is that if your father's creating cultivated meat or something, or stem cell meat or something? That's awesome. You have a good point. I like that.
Yeah. So yeah. So I was one of those kids that actually would have liked my father just to be, I don't know, a bank director or something. That was easy. So my father works at a bank. Uh, yeah, and I came to my friends, what's your father do? Uh, you really want to know? Are you sure? Um, I actually think that sometimes I wasn't invited back after I told the
No,
story. Yeah, it
I
was
don't.
so outrageous. And in the 1980s, trying to do cultivated meat and trying to explain to somebody who had done a lot of work to become a medical doctor and who was also at that time probably leading in his field, going around telling the world all of his great scientific achievements. Telling a guy like that, hey, I think you should change your career and come with me and start using your techniques and your career and everything here to create steak to be sold in a supermarket. It took him about 10 years before anybody actually wanted to seriously work on this and start writing some stuff around this and writing the first proof of concept. That was 1993. That was 30 years later.
Well, your father was ahead of his time. I mean, he was a leader in this industry.
Well, I think, well, I know right now that before I thought, but now I know that currently somehow all the cultivated meat companies somehow work on cultivated meat because my father did this work when he started in the 1980s. And of course, it's a matter of domino tiles. There's never one person that does the trick, but I do think there were many domino tiles aligned, and my father did give the first nudge so that they all went on falling down. But it was a lot of hard work and a lot of convincing and a lot of frustration as well.
So I'm
One of the
curious,
hardest.
when did you realize that this was your father, that your father was the conduit here?
I always knew that because
Okay.
I knew. What I didn't know is that my father became sick, I think, 1 year after the first big media hype was happening with the first hamburger. And that was in 1913. I think in 1914, he became really sick. He was sick for about a year and he died in 1915. And from, let's say, the hamburger till 2017, I didn't read, listen to anything around cultivated meat. I wasn't interested. It was not top of mind. I miss my father because he was a great guy to talk to. I liked talking to my dad. I did that almost every day. I was an only child, so who else to talk to when you're a bit crazy? Yeah, really.
I
And
laugh from experience as an only child.
yeah, yeah, and he was fun, and he was fast, and he was smart, and yeah. And then suddenly, so 2 years after he had passed away, I got an email from Josh Tetrick from Just Egg. But most people know them as Just Mayo or Just Egg or Just Cookie Dough. All of them great stuff, actually. But at the time, I didn't know anything about a guy named Josh Tetrick. I was under the impression that cultivated meat was something that everybody had forgotten about and was going to be one of those ideas that we should have worked on. And then Josh emailed me. We acquired your father's patents. We want to talk to you. And I was really like, why? But if anybody knows Josh Tetrick, if you don't respond to an email from Josh Tetrick, you get another one and another one. So at a certain point, he sent me another email that he really wanted to talk to me. And in that email, he also did a link to a film. And that was a little film was called Ian the Chicken.
Wow, I would just watch that one.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and I advise everybody to look at that film because that film, it's actually made by an amazing guy called Colby Macri. And if I wouldn't have seen that film, I think I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. But because of the fact that in that film, somebody had portrayed in an amazing, beautifully artistic way exactly my father's vision and the vision that I had been aware of for the last 40 years of my life, and I had talked about for so many years. And seeing that portrayed in a short film, which is a really a good film and explaining exactly what cultivated meat is supposed to be, I got tears in my eyes, and I sent Josh a very short message like, you can call me anytime, this is my phone number. And so the next day he called me, and what was really funny, what happened is that Josh Tetrick was under the impression that he had to explain me what cultivated meat was. And I think
Wow.
2 or 3 sentences in, I started laughing out loud, and I said, hey, wait a minute. You're not going to tell me what cultivated meat is. I know what that is, and I know what it is supposed to be, and I know how that works. And then we found each other in the fact that I had so much knowledge around cultivated meat. And I wasn't even aware of that. It was one of those things that I just, yeah, I knew a lot about cultivated meat. Why not? But what I didn't know at the time, and I had to learn fast, that did actually was a growing industry, that it had taken off, that magical hamburger Mark Post made, that actually was the tipping point of disinterest to a lot of interest.
Mhm.
And yeah, so Josh invited me to come over to San Francisco, and I was sitting in the plane, was looking outside, and said, Dad, thank you. Wow. Invited to San Francisco and gone and invited to eat cultivated meat, which I did. So they fed me all kind of amazing stuff, and there was cameras there, and there was yeah, all kind of people. And what was great, they also showed me around in the lab, and they had actually a picture of my dad as inspiration.
Oh,
And I
that's
was
so
really,
nice.
wow, yeah. And yes, I am indebted to Josh and Andrew and Colby forever, because of them, I had the chance to even get my father better, get to know my father better than I did before, because now I was actually walking his actually in his footsteps. I met the same people he met. I had the same conversations he had. Of course, in a different time zone, but still with hurdles, still with difficulties, still with things that people don't understand. A lot of frustration there as well. And I grew to have more respect for my own father than I had before, because he worked on this for years and years and years. And yeah, it's kind of sad that he's not here to witness it. But on the other hand, I have found so many amazing, beautiful, fantastic people. So even though I don't make a penny out of this, because it's not something that pays the bills, and I'm not a startup getting any investment money. At the same time, I'm very rich with everybody who I know, the things that I get to talk about, and I even got myself talking on stage with people, being not at all afraid to do that, because I know the story, I know the content, I know what it is supposed to be, and it touches so many of the problems that we have, whether it is animal cruelty, whether it's sustainability, whether it's climate, whether it's being, yeah, going about water in a better way. maybe even creating jobs for farmers. It is a possible solution for many, many things.
Yeah, for so many things.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk about some of the challenges that we see in realizing the full potential of this movement. Could you talk to me a little bit about that and what you see for that?
Oh, there are many challenges. There are many challenges, and this can still just actually, even though we have 45 to 50 startups working in this way, if you look at it more closely, if you divide 50 startups between all the different kind of animals you can eat, like fish and pork and cows and chicken. So, and then also the different techniques that they're working on. This is not a huge industry at all. There has been some money into it, but I think all the money together in the startups currently working on cultivated meat, I think the last year, most animal producers or meat producers have invested more in slaughterhouses than all the money together in cultivated meat. So this is still a small industry, and the tech is there, the knowledge is there, the mission is there. Everything you probably need is already somewhere on this planet. It has to work together. It has to come together. We need more open source in this, so more universities actually educating people in this direction. And we have to do the tech and the engineering and the automation and the digitization to scale this. So what we can do right now in very small quantities and the knowledge that we've built around small quantities of cells, how to scale this up, not to something that is this big, but yeah, can stand here and then be multiplied. That is still a challenge that has not been built yet.
Right.
So the potential is there. Everybody can actually see it. It's not rocket science to understand that this is a huge potential, but we still have to do the work. On the other hand, if you look at what the price range was in 2013, and if you look at what the same hamburger would cost today, that is a decline in price, and that is amazing. So if we can keep that up, that we can make hamburgers for an affordable price with really clean meat, so healthy and clean meat for those that actually want to eat meat, I think this can even become a commodity that goes to supermarkets for people to eat. And I believe that as soon as you have the choice whether to eat real meat, which has been produced in a very transparent way and that you can follow from start to finish, or conventional meat, you will actually start to think that why not eat this meat? It's going to be the first time that you can ask somebody, do you want to eat meat or do you want to eat a dead animal?
Oy.
Yep. Sorry.
When you put it like that.
Yeah, but it's exactly what it is.
No,
and
I'm not negating that at all, right? I get it. I do. And it's true. It's true. It's totally true. Yeah. I wonder, you know, how I think that there's still the vegetarian, the vegans that don't want to eat animals at all, right? We're not even talking to them, I'm sure, because they don't want to eat it regardless. It's not for them. No. But I do like animals, and I would prefer not to eat, you know, one that was killed.
You want to eat a live one?
No. I love my dogs and I love all my animals, and pigs are really smart. And then you start to learn about these animals, right? The more you learn about them, the more I don't want to eat them. The octopus is really smart, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're really smart. So, you know, the more we learn, the more information we have, the harder it is to continue to do some of what we've been doing unconsciously, which is part of what drives this podcast, right? It's about making informed choices. So, you know, I cringe when I say that, only because I know that with the information, I'll make a more informed choice, which is really what I'm trying to encourage everyone else to do. So,
Well, rest assured, you're not alone in this. You would expect in countries that are well informed, where you can eat whatever you like, that a large percentage of its population would stop eating meat, especially given all that people are aware of. In a country like the Netherlands, last year, we've been eating more meat than the year before.
wow.
Exactly.
2020 or 2019?
Last year for me is 2019.
Okay, just curious.
No, but that's an interesting question, Yvette, because
COVID has impacted meat consumption patterns and plant-based meat and other meat consumption patterns a lot. So that's why we ask what
no, and
exactly.
that's where my head went when you said it, Yvette. I was like, oh, interesting, because I would have thought it would be higher because of 2020 with COVID.
Yeah, but if you look at for instance, most menus that you have from takeaways, if it's not Indian or a specific vegan restaurant, still the choice today is 80% with the main thing in it, the meat, and maybe 20% also nice dishes that are vegan or vegetarian. And during COVID, we've been ordering out like crazy. And yes, we are more aware of our health, and maybe feel there's maybe a little bit guilt somewhere nibbling at us. So yes, plant-based products are surging, especially dairy, by the way. But still, we eat too much. I eat too much. We're hooked on meat, and all the numbers are telling us that meat consumption is still rising. So, and especially in Asia.
Yeah, absolutely. The Asian population, especially China and India, with the current projected growth rates, the math just doesn't add up to feed the population, not to mention the environmental and economic antibiotics challenges. In fact, we are speaking with Sonali from Green Queen right after. So we were discussing how alternative proteins are faring in Asia and then in Europe from your perspective, and in the US. Really interesting to compare the cultural, how does cultural elements and the geographical factors play into the business of alternative proteins. So you have mentioned in terms of challenges is on the research and development aspect, also on the consumer awareness education aspect from what you said. Is any of this specific to Europe? You've mentioned the Netherlands a little bit, but we're really interested in comparing across countries, cultures. How does this landscape look like? How, for example, the Netherlands market is similar to the US, and how is it dissimilar?
I'm not an expert on this, to be quite honest. I do know that we don't eat as much meat or animal protein as in the States. As far as I've been told, because I never did the research myself, so I just listened to people saying this. In the US, it's almost 60% of the diet, going on to 60% of the diet, whereas in the Netherlands, it's around 40% of the diet, going on to 50%. So the US is a very bad trendsetter in this aspect. And currently in Asia, the amount of animal products or animal protein that people eat is around 10 to 15%, which is, if you look at it from a health perspective, that's not a bad number. But they want to eat more animal protein, and it's the largest area on this planet. Asia is much bigger than Europe. It's a couple of times bigger than America, and also Africa. As soon as they can get their hands on meat, they want to have this because it's also something cultural. If you are well off, you buy a fridge and you put in meat before you build a house, and that is not something crazy I'm saying. That is actually some researchers have found out that people, as soon as they make a little bit more money, they buy a fridge and start eating meat. And it's also that if you are used to eating meat, meat is nice to eat. It tastes well. You have certain people that are really disgusted by the taste of meat, but the majority of people actually like to eat meat. Then if you look at the impact that I say current produced meat has on the planet, we will do the math and understand that that is not possible. And so cultivated meat is for the people that still want to eat meat, have that sensation, have that taste, and because we will not be able to have as many animals as we currently have. And if there's one person to say that, coming from the Netherlands, we have more animals in this country than we have people.
Wow.
By the way, we're a crazy country. We also have more bicycles in Amsterdam than we have people. But yeah, we also have more pigs, more cows, more chicken, more eggs. We're one of the biggest meat exporters in the world. And we're a really small and tiny country.
So Ira, I'm curious. You're talking about cultured meat. You've been in this since you're 14. You're continuing on your father's mission, so to speak, even though you're not, the patents have been sold, etc.
Yeah.
What is your goal, your objectives? What do you hope to achieve as you continue on this journey?
Oh, wow. Normal, sane people ask that question, and then they make a plan, and then they go after their plan or their objective. I just landed here and didn't go away. I think so. I got to San Francisco. I met Josh. I met all of these amazing people. I went on a learning spree, and I kept on learning and meeting people, and I wasn't really sure what my role was going to be. Of course, everybody asked me to come speak to them or do a talk somewhere around, can you tell me something about cultivated meat? And I did, but I knew that was not my role only. And at a certain point, I met Tony Hunter. He's a guy from Australia. He does a podcast on future tech. And we had a fun conversation in San Francisco. I said, I don't really know what I'm going to do here. Maybe I'll just stick to my own career. And he said, you should give Olivia Fox-Cabana a call. Oh, yes, I remembered her. I had been to a party with her. I found her funny and a real fireball, and we clicked. So I actually gave her a call, and then she said, hey, but aren't you working for Just? I said, no, I'm not working for Just. I'm in their advisory board, and that actually means that nobody asks me a question, because if somebody doesn't need advice, it's George Tetrick. So yeah, no, I don't do anything at Just. I sometimes help them out or whatever. And then she said, so, oh, girl, you are going to be so busy. And I said, okay. And then we sort of clicked. We became really close friends, and we got to work. And to be quite honest, I don't know what the objective is, but having fun, creating a platform where we highlight amazing future tech is something that we ended up doing with Kind Earth Tech. And we're both in the middle of a network of people that want to change the world and make it a better place, create better food, tasty food, healthy food, amazing food, without a horrible footprint. And if we meet them, if we find them, we just put them on stage and create an event around them in a way that an event should be, and in a way that it's an event that I would like to go to myself. So when I started doing this in Amsterdam, I actually did breakout sessions on canal boats.
Oh,
And
that sounds fun.
yeah, and we had a waste dinner in a discotheque, and because that is something I would like to do myself. And right now, this Friday, I'm organizing an 11 hours long event. It starts in Amsterdam, Europe. We stay there for 3.5 hours. Then without a break, we say hello to Sonali and Sandia, and they will host 1.5 hours in Asia. Then from there, we travel all the way to the East Coast of the US, where we are met by Shannon Theobald and Isabella Grande, and they host 3 hours. Then we go to the West Coast, and there I meet up with my friend Olivia and say, hey, hi, girl, I've been on this road for a couple of hours. Now it's your turn. And she will host a couple of hours, and then we head back to Amsterdam and we do a virtual after party, have some amazing talks there too, do some announcements around something that is really news. And the whole reason that we started doing this virtual event, something I didn't want to do because I don't like virtual events, was the fact that I had been doing research with Wageningen University on the possibilities of farmers doing cultivated meat on their farms. So converting an actual farm into a cultivated meat farm. And we've done research on that, and the research actually stipulates that we present the research this year. So we had to do something, and we couldn't do it live. And I postponed and I postponed and I postponed until I couldn't postpone anymore. And then very last minute, I decided to do something around the research. And it was supposed to be an event that would take about 2 or 3 hours max. And now it's 11 hours. There's still people banging at my door.
Can you tell our listeners how they would learn about these events? How can our listeners find more out about these events?
Okay, how they can find out about the events? Well, the easiest way is to follow me and Olivia on LinkedIn, because that's sort of our social media platform. Okay. And we're called kindearth.tech. And if you type that in, so it's a kind to the earth.tech. And it may sound funny, but it is my firm belief that people take to tech very easily. We speak, we cook, we write, and for us it's our second nature, but it's actually adapting techniques which are easy. We have now actually adapted to our phones in such a way that we use it as our second brain. Hardly anybody still knows a phone number from somebody. Kids don't even have to learn languages anymore because you can just talk to the phone, and why on earth would
Google
I learn
Translate?
Yeah, why would I? I have more important stuff to learn in my game or what. So the world is changing like crazy, and we're technical beings. And as soon as we make sure that we consider tech as something good, if we do the right things with them, then I think it's very important to highlight people that are creating stuff on a high level of techniques. So really cutting edge tech for food. Because food is the biggest industry in the world. It's what makes us people and the world run. If we impact the food industry, a lot of the problems that we're facing with climate change can be solved or made better. Mm-hmm. So I think it's worthwhile what we're doing.
Ira, thank you. We're going to take a short break, have a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
So listeners, stay with us. We'll just take a 2-minute break to hear a little message. I want to thank today's sponsor, NextGenChef. NextGenChef feeds members with the knowledge and tools that they need to create concepts with purpose and succeed. If you're listening today, they are offering a 1-year subscription for any new founder that wants to participate at a special discounted rate. For more information, email team@nextgenchef.com. If you're interested in becoming a member or just a part of the community, email NextGenChef at team@nextgenchef.com. You can also follow them on Instagram at NextGenChef, as well as on LinkedIn and on Facebook. Thank you again, NextGenChef, for making this podcast possible. Together, we can change the future of food. So I want to just thank you guys for joining us today. Thank our listeners for bearing with us, and welcome you all back as we come back for the second half of our episode with Ira and Yvette. And in this portion, we just want to really have Ira just share a couple tips that she has for our listeners. Maybe talk a little bit more about the event coming up, and maybe get to know her a little bit more on a personal level, and have Yvette maybe ask her a couple of fun questions so she can share them with our listeners. Yvette, maybe you want to lead us in this second half?
Yeah, absolutely. So from our first segment, Ira really she was talking about the importance of consumer education, how Kind Earth Tech helps to deliver that element to this very nascent field, because it's not only, the challenges are not only in the research and development, which the scientists are taking care of. Consumers also need to get excited and also feel that they have a great appetite for this technology. I think what you do at Kind Earth Tech is exactly what the Ian the Chicken movie did to you. You're trying to communicate this very sophisticated technology and to translate it into a delicious and fun and exciting message. So people around the world, in the Netherlands, the East Coast, the West Coast of the United States and Asia, can all hear about it. It's like a marathon of fun and great technology. And in addition, you mentioned the research project you did with the university. That's really interesting, because I was at this other event, and then they mentioned Mercy for Animals. They have this project called Transformation, in which they introduce chicken farmers into alternative proteins to help them to transition from conventional farming into animal farming. So if it is not under R&D, would love for you to give our listeners a sneak peek of the research, because it's very cutting edge, and we'd love to hear about it.
Well, the conclusions of the research will be presented during the CAT event. And we'll also have a roundtable with all the stakeholders that actually took part in the research, because the way we did this, or at least Cor van der Welen, Professor Cor van der Welen, she's from Wageningen University, and I only assisted. As CAT, we provided people around this research. And I was very proud to take part in this, to be quite honest, because she does amazing work in this field. And we brought together in the first round farmers, so that are currently working with animals, so animal dairy farmers, meat farmers, and brought them together and gave them scenarios, and started talking with them. Is this a feasible possibility for you? And in that group, there was quite a lot of skepticism in there, like, this is not for me. But there was also a very enthusiastic group that said, hey, this might be for me. I want to go on with this. And at the time, she thought it would be possible to actually already start working with these farmers on cultivated meat, but she found out that it was not. The technical solutions for somebody actually converting a farm into a cultivated meat farm and do further research on this is not possible at this moment. So we got to talking and then said, well, why not do the same with the stakeholders? Because sometimes we forget that between a farmer and your plate, there are many stakeholders, like the slaughterhouse, the veterinarian, the feed company that provides the feed, the bank that gives away money or lends money to the farmers. There's a whole ecosystem between you and a farmer. And I got together groups of stakeholders, and in each group we had a farmer and somebody from the industry and somebody from government, and it was a rich mix. And we gave them again 4 scenarios to look at. And well, I'm not going to tell you about the outcome, but I've learned a lot from this, from doing this research, seeing people really crack their minds open during our conversations, because people could freely elaborate on what their ideas were around these topics. And it actually confirmed my belief that in the cultivated meat sphere, there is room. So it's not the one route to market, but there is definitely room for a substantial part of the farming community actually becoming meat cell farmers. So yes, farming cells instead of farming animals. That whole idea.
Amazing.
And if you then want to look at it, the funny thing about people is we think in images. So if we think about a farm, we have a certain image in our head. And if we think about cultivated meat, we have a totally different image. The farm is green and brown and animals and rustic. And cultivated meat is something that it has a white coat and a petri dish, and it's a lab thing, and it's tech, and it's high end, it's futuristic, and it's probably white and very white and more white. Whereas the reality of every food is, and especially most of our porridges or your current soups that you can buy, they are all created in kind of lab conditions. And whether it comes from a factory or whether it comes from a food producer, but it is never created, it is never produced in a lab. And like beer, you have these gigantic beer factories, but you also have craft beer or people that have small breweries. So, and it's my firm belief that meat will go the same route. You will have big factories, let's say factories where they make cultivated meat, absolutely. But there's also room for local people making this in a high-end way, transparent, and making food locally is important, because that is food safety. And that is maybe also creating your own taste. So I try to highlight the possibilities for farmers that are currently being told, in not always the kindest way, that their future is not with animals. The farming should stop, less animals. Everybody has something to say about this, and nobody is giving them, besides, of course, people doing a project like what you said, an alternative. And I think cultivated meat is one of the alternatives. And yeah, it might be one of the things that comes out of this research. Not sure.
Wow. Wow. Guess all the listeners, and we have to stay tuned to Kind Earth Tech this Friday to learn about the really cutting edge research results. And I love the analogy between cell-based meat and breweries is really fitting because the food grows in a nutrient-dense environment, and then it produces this very local and delicious and healthy food or beverage. It compares something we're so familiar with, like beer, to cell-based meat, which is very cutting edge. So that's amazing. And before the end of our show, could you share with us some of your quarantine recipes? We know that you have been cooking quite a bit.
That's true. I have been cooking quite a bit, but everything that I could possibly want, I can buy here. So it wasn't really quarantine cooking. But one of the things that I have turned to the last year is the richness of, and I think with us it's called paddenstoelen, and I think you call it fungi.
Wow.
Oh,
And
mushrooms?
yeah, mushrooms, that's the one.
Yeah, mushrooms.
And I always ate mushrooms, but I have started eating these really large ones that are a little bit long, and you cut them in half and you bake them, and and they're so yummy. So if there's something new on my plate these days, it's a wide array of mushrooms.
Yum, I love mushrooms.
Yeah, me
And
too.
as an added bonus, I hear they're really good for the mood. So like in the pandemic, if you're ever sort of feeling tired or lethargic or just, I read an article that they're really good for the mood. So that's an added bonus too, right?
Okay. Well, I did something on my birthday. I had, when it was possible to have a few people in your house. Right now, I can only have 2 people. At the time, I could have 4. So I actually had a dinner at my birthday.
Happy
And
birthday.
well, one more year. And I made one of these big mushrooms, and I put a
Like
Beyond Burger
portobello
on
mushroom?
top.
Like a
Wow.
portobello mushroom?
A
Okay.
portobello, and on top of the portobello, I did an amazing Beyond Burger, and then with really nice seasoning, and it was a really rich stack, that one.
Wow. Well, maybe you
Wow.
can share your recipe so we can put it in the show notes for everyone. Beyond Burger, the portobello mushroom, and some nice herbs.
No,
It
but I
sounds
really,
perfect.
they were big like a saucer, and then a Beyond Burger can go on top of it, and then you rest it on a little bit of rice, and it was really wow. This was wow.
That sounds very nice. That sounds very good. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Before we go, I do want to invite you, Ira, if you haven't, to download the NextGenChef app, because the other way that listeners and other founders and community members can connect with you is through our app. It's
Okay.
a tailored LinkedIn for people in food and beverage. So it's a place for like-minded individuals or people building better for you food businesses to connect. So you can chat, survey, share things on the community board, and talk about all things food, better for you food. And
I
it's a
love
great
that.
way to connect. So for our listeners out there, it's a free app. It's called NextGenChef. They're one of our sponsors, and they host a lot of events. They host the Essential Ingredients podcast, which is what you're listening to now. If you like this, subscribe to the channel, download, leave a review if you like what you hear. We're here every week. This is a special series that we're doing on cultivated meat. And today we have Ira here to talk about that. So for those of you that like this, please download the channel, subscribe, leave us a review. We want to hear from you. If you like this and you want to be a sponsor, send me a note. If you want to share your story, send me a note. We want to hear from you. Ira, thank you so much for joining us. To our listeners, thank you so much for listening to us. Yvette, as always, thank you so much for both participating, for being a great producer, and making this podcast possible as well. And good luck on Friday.
Yeah, thank you.
We're
I
so
hope to see
excited for
both
you.
of
We're going to
you.
make sure to get this out there, spread the word, and we hope it's a great success. We know it will be.
We'll be there.
Well, go on and see what we're doing. And it's 11 hours, so maybe you have some time. I would love to offer your members something special, but if you go to the website and want to buy a ticket, we would love you to buy a full ticket, which is actually, I think it's $18. But if you can't afford it and think that's too much because you only want to go an hour, you can also just pay $1, because we also have a ticket that says pay as you
What
please.
you can, right?
Yeah.
And which is what I
So-
think a lot of people are doing in this time, in this environment with everything going on. So that's
Exactly.
really very gracious of you. And I hope that our listeners will hear what you're saying, go on and be able to pay what they can,
Yeah.
and go on, hear the information, be part of the community, and change the future of food.
Yeah.
So again,
And
thank you
yeah,
for joining
and
us.
ask your questions. As long as we understand what you don't understand, we can explain it better. Then we can make sure that we get the right speakers on stage. So if anything about what I just explained here makes you skeptical, then especially the people that are skeptical, I don't want haters. Haters just want to hate. But if you're skeptical and you're curious, do drop me a line. It's not hard to find me.
Send her a note on the app, because
Yeah.
I was going to download it, and you're going to be able to contact her there as well.
Yeah.
Go on Friday, be part of the community. Let's change the future of food together. Thank you, Ira, so much for joining us.
My pleasure.